ایک دفعہ اور سب مل کے بابا سے بلند نعرہ صلوات.
اللہم صل علی محمد و آل محمد.
عین سے عین سے دور پڑھیے محمد آل محمد.
اللہم صل علی محمد و آل محمد.
ہر دور کے نقیب ہیں ہر دور کے نقیب ہیں قرآن و اہل بیت ہر دور کے نقیب ہیں قرآن و اہل بیت. انسان کا نصیب ہے قرآن و اہل بیت. اللہ کے قریب ہیں قرآن و اہل بیت. اللہ کے قریب ہیں قرآن و اہل بیت. محبوب کے حبیب ہیں قرآن و اہل بیت. حق اہل بیت کا ہے خدا کی کتاب پر لاکھوں درود علیہ رسالت ماب پر.
اللہم صل علی محمد و آل محمد.
کے نقیب ہیں قرآن و اہل بیت. درود پڑھیے محمد آل محمد.
اللہم صل علی محمد و آل محمد.
جناب ساحل لکھنوی صاحب کا سلام آپ لوگ کی پیش خدمت اہل بیت کے حوالے سے. ہے شہ میں بکا ہوتی رہے، کیا ہوا دنیا جو ہوتی ہے خفا ہوتی رہے، ہے عزادارو غمیں شہ میں بکا ہوتی رہے، کر کے اونچا یہ علم رکھ لو عزاداری کیا، کر کے اونچا یہ علم رکھ لو علمداری کیا، گر مخالف ہے زمانے کی ہوا ہوتی رہے، رو پڑھیے محمد آل محمد، اے عزادارو غمیں شہ میں بکا ہوتی رہے، پاؤں تھک جائیں تو سر کے بل چلو لے کر علم، ارے پاؤں تھک جائیں تو سر کے بل چلو لے کر علم، ارے ہاتھ کٹ جائے تو آنکھوں سے عذاب ہوتی رہے، درود پڑھیں محمد آل محمد، عاشق خون میں درد ڈھلتا ہی رہے اے چشم تر، عاشق خون میں درد ڈھلتا ہی رہے اے چشم تر، دل کی حالت آنسوؤں سے آئینہ ہوتی رہے، ہے عزادارو دیکھ کر جوش بکا شوق فغاں ذوق عزا، دیکھ کر جو جوش بکا شوق فغاں ذوق عزا، لذت غم سے یہ دنیا آشنا ہوتی رہے، درود پڑھیے محمد آل محمد، عزادارو غمیں حل عطا والوں کی منزل سے ہے وہ کتنا قریب، حل عطا والوں کی منزل سے ہے وہ کتنا قریب، حل عطا والوں کی خود جس پر عطا ہوتی رہے، ہے یہی تو روح سجدوں کی عبادت کا نکھرا، مدح اہل بیت صلی علی ہوتی رہے، عزادارو غمیں گر خطا ہے الفت آل نبی کو حشر تک، گر خطا ہے الفت فاتحہ. مولا علی کی شہادت کے حوالے سے میر انیس کے مرثیہ کے بند آپ لوگوں کی پیش خدمت درود پڑھیں گے. محمد وعلی محمد.
صلی علی محمد وعلی محمد.
اے روزے دارو آؤ بکا کے یہ روز ہے سرتاج اوصیاء کی عزا کے یہ روز ہے سعادت پر نزول بلا کے یہ روز ہے تم سے وداع شیر خدا کے یہ روز ہے زخمی ہوئے امام تمہارے نماز میں ظالم نے روزے دار کو مارا نماز میں ظالم نے روزے دار کو مارا نماز میں. ماہ مبارک رمضان خدا کا گھر پیش خدا وہ سجدے میں شیر خدا کا سر ہر تڑکا وہ نور کا وہ شب قدر کی سحر اور ہائے تیغ ظلم کی ضربہ وہ فرد پر فوار خون کے زخم جبھی سے بہا کیے سجدے میں آپ رب العلا کہا کیے سجدے میں آپ رب العلا کہا کیے. ناگا نمازیوں کے گروہ آئے ننگے سر پڑھواؤ تم نماز جماعت کی اے پسر. اور حیدر نے مجتبیٰ سے کہا کہ کھول کر ارے ہم بیٹھے بیٹھے پڑھتے ہیں اپنے مقام پر لیکن جبھی کے زخم پر رومال باندھ دو میرا سر شگافتہ ہے لال باندھ دو میرا سر شگافتہ لال باندھ دو. باندھا حسن نے زخم سر شیر ذوالجلال شبر نے کسا تو کیا پھر وہی مقام بولے علی کے اور کسو درد ہے کمال پھر چست باندھ کر یہ پکارا وہ خوش قصہ اب درد کیسا ہے اسد ذوالجلال ہے ہاتھوں سے سر پکڑ کے کہا وہ یہ حال ہے ہاتھوں سے سر پکڑ کے کہا وہ یہ حال ہے پڑھوا کے پھر نماز جماعت کی مجتبی ناگہاں کہ یہ کسی اور نے دی صدا ارے بابا کے سر پہ پڑھنے لگے یا شفا زہرا کے پیارو تم سے یہ زینب نے ہے کہا بابا کو میرے جلد جو گھر میں نہ لاؤ گے تو سر برہنہ مجھ کو بھی مسجد میں پاؤ گے تو سر برہنہ مجھ کو بھی مسجد میں پاؤ گے پہنچا جو لاشائے شاہ مردان قریب در بعد اس کے یوں ہی آئی تھی اکبر کی لاش پر بے ساختہ نکل پڑی زینب برہنہ سر یہ واقعہ تھا باپ کا وہ ماتم پسر ارے رکھ رکھ کے ہاتھ آنکھوں پہ سب خلق ہٹ گئی ارے پھیلا کے ہاتھ لاش سے زینب لپٹ گئی پھیلا کے ہاتھ لاش سے زینب لپٹ گئی اے روزے دارو مولا کو حمد دے آپ لوگ دعائے غم حسین کے اور تمام مومن مومنات کی صحت و سلامتی کے لیے بابا ذکر النعرہ صلوات
Tonight is the second night of the Zarabat. Amir al-Mu'mineen is laying in bed, injured, ready to meet his Lord. Hasanain, Zainab, Kulsum are with him, around him, all distraught. This is a very heavy night on the household of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Inshallah, we will have program now continue with a speech. We have Sheikh Vinay Khetia with us from Toronto. Sheikh has started the speech series 2 nights ago. Sheikh studied at traditional Islamic seminaries in London, Iraq and Syria. He has an undergraduate degree in religious and Near Eastern studies from the University of Toronto and an MA in the history and philosophy of religion from Concordia University. He's about to finish his PhD in the Department of Religious Studies at McMaster's University, with a focus on intellectual history of Islam, specifically Shiism. I'd now like to request the Sheikh to come to the mimbar with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
नाराए हैदरी हैदरी राष्ट्रपति इमाम ज़माना बुलंद तर सलावत
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من اللعين الغوي الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المقتولين المهديين الميامين، ولا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين أرواحنا لهم الفداء، ولعنة الله دائمة على أعدائهم من يوم عداوتهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، قال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا من يرتد منكم عن دينه فسوف يأتي الله بقوم يحبهم ويحبونه أذلة على المؤمنين عزة على الكافرين يجاهدون في سبيل الله ولا يخافون لومة لائم ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله واسع عليم. I began with this verse on the first night. For those who were here, I know it's just a few of you, so I'll quickly recap. This verse from Surah Al-Ma'idah 54 encompasses the relationship among other verses. As I mentioned, the concept of love in the Quran is discussed about 130 times. In this particular verse, Allah Azza wa Jal is describing this profound relationship of mutual love. يُحِبُّهُمْ وَيُحِبُّونَهُ. He loves them and they love him. And if there is a group of people that leave this religion, Allah says He will bring another group. There will be another group of people. Allah, as we read, لَنْ يُضُرُّ اللَّهَ شَيْئًا, that God shall never be hurt by anything. No, if people choose to leave this religion, it doesn't hurt Allah and it doesn't hurt Islam. Islam, the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need us, we need the deen of Allah. This is a very important point here. The deen belongs to Allah Azza wa Jal, not to us. We are not doing any favor to Islam or to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or to the Imam of the time. The only favor and the fadl is done to us. Allah says if you don't want to believe, or if you want to reject the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, as the tafasir tell us of many of both the groups of the Muslims, that there are several traditions revealed that tell us that this verse is about those who will oppose Amir al-Mu'mineen. This may be an uncomfortable thing, but it is a reality that there are different groups in Islamic history. As someone who spent the better part of 20 years teaching this and studying this and now teaching it at at both the graduate and undergraduate level, it's just sometimes an uncomfortable fact to talk about, but it's a reality. You cannot know who Mawla Ali is unless you know about his life. There are aspects of his life that this verse describes. Fighting in the way of Allah, not taking the complaint of any complainer. Who is this? لا يخافون لومة لائم يجاهدون في سبيل الله ولا يخافون لومة لائم. And they fight in the way of Allah, they go out in the way of Allah, struggle in the way of Allah. And they don't take the complaint of anyone who is complaining. If this verse, as the Imams have explained to us, nazalat fi Amir al-Mu'mineen wa ashaba, that it was revealed about Amir al-Mu'mineen and his companions, then who are the people that they are struggling against? Clearly, everything is not hunky-dory and rosy. There is issues. Unless we say that the verse only applies at the time of the Prophet, and then after the time of the Prophet it has no application. So the Ashab of Ali, did they exist at the time of the Prophet? No, they were the Ashab of Rasulullah. So if the Ashab of Ali are struggling in the way of Allah, are they struggling against the Byzantines or the Romans? Who are they struggling against? يُجَاهِدُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَلَا يَخَافُونَ لَوْمَةَ لَائِمٍ. The ayah is clear. They love Allah, Allah loves them, and they love Allah. يُحِبُّهُمْ وَيُحِبُّونَهُمْ. It's a very great position. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. And this is the virtue and the grace of God whom He gives to whom He wants. And we spoke about the first night about one of the applications of this is when the Prophet says, I'll be giving a flag, the raya, that tomorrow I will give a flag to a man. يُحِبُّ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولَهُ, that he loves Allah and His Messenger, and Allah and His Messenger love him. And then he handed the flag to Amir al-Mu'mineen, and this was at the Battle of Khaybar. What is my point here? My point, Mu'mineen, is that the life of Mawla Ali, as Marshall Hodgson himself, he's not a Muslim, a Quaker Christian, who wrote a book called The Venture of Islam. He says himself, this is a non-Muslim who studied the history of Islam. Volume 1, The Venture of Islam, published by Chicago University Press. He says himself, when it comes to the person of Ali, why is it that that he became such a person that people gravitated towards him, but a group of people detested him? They hated him. Because he stood for a form of justice, a form of social justice and equity and fairness that some Muslims felt was either naive. Na'udhu billah, Imam Ali is not naive. Naive is not a good quality. Naive meaning he's just living in La La Land. Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa. But some historians say that Ali was at fault because he was naive. What does he expect? Yes, this is some historians say this. Some historians narrate this. Hodgson says something else slightly different. He says Ali's conception of, I'm paraphrasing what Hodgson says in volume 1. So don't take it from, it's not some Maulana from Iran or Iraq is coming and saying this. This is a historian, a well-known historian of Islam. He says Amir al-Mu'mineen's vision of the world was hard for the people around him to grasp. And it doesn't matter whether it's someone's father, a rich man or a poor man, or someone who fought next to the Prophet at Badr, or Uhud, or ran away at Uhud. Either one. It doesn't matter. And because he was younger, and given that preference by the Prophet during his lifetime to a young man, it was unusual in Arabia at that time for a young man to be given so much fadila and virtue and preference, and in addition to that, to his young daughter as well. People became a little bit bitter about this. This is natural human tendency. For example, if we're in the masjid now, and let's say there is a younger person who's in any community is more qualified, more pious, more learned, appointed by our marja, let us say, and the older people feel, I've worked here 40 years. And Sayyid Sistani just passes me over. He doesn't give me the respect. Who is he? Who is Aga Sistani to pass me over for the promotion to be head of the masjid? Just giving an example. It's a natural, the ego, the nafs, this is tabi'i. Right? People will naturally feel a little bit bitter and upset about these things, and angry perhaps. But the ashab of Mawla Ali, salamullahi alayhi, the verse, the Aimma tell us, salamullahi alayhi, that this verse was revealed, whom Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali wa ashaba, hina qatala man qatala. That when they fought, whoever fought him, min al-nakithin wa qasitin wa marikin, from the people that broke their pledge with Amir al-Mu'mineen, they turned against Amir al-Mu'mineen, they violated their honor, their trust with Amir al-Mu'mineen, the mariqin, nakithin. So are these Byzantines and Romans or are these Muslims? Come on. They're not Byzantines. They're not. It's not revealed about Yahud. It's not revealed about Hindus. It's the Muslims. So clearly, the scales of justice apply to both non-Muslims and Muslims. For Amir al-Mu'mineen, it didn't matter whether someone was a Jew or a Christian or a Hindu or a Muslim. Allah and His Messenger have a right over jami'an, over everybody. It doesn't matter. Whether you are an old companion or a new companion. It doesn't matter. This nonsense of, oh, but I became Muslim early. So what? Where does Allah say in the Quran that because you became Muslim early, you get a pass? So now you have an 18-year-old, we'll get to this in a bit, I don't want to get ahead here, but tonight we're going to talk about, and tomorrow night and the night after that, about the people that are truly in love with Mawla Ali and the justice of Ali ibn Abi Talib. The people for whom this verse applies to. Then there's two people I want to discuss tonight. We'll go a little longer tonight. These are the nights of Mawla Amir al-Mu'mineen. There's two people I want to speak about, which I really hope Mu'mineen can put this in their hearts if they don't know. It's a story of a mother and her child. A mother and her child. And it's not al-Banin and Abu Fadl Abbas. No, because you all know that story. This is the story of those that sacrificed themselves in the way of Allah, but this sacrifice is often not well known by the community. By some, not by others. And the name of the mother is Asma bint Umays, and the son is Muhammad bin Abi Bakr. These two individuals, the mother and the son, contributed things to the path of Islam and the wilayah of Ali that is forever enshrined in history, such that I was speaking to one of the great historians in Najaf al-Ashraf, and I asked him about Asma bint Umays, one of my teachers, very old mujtahid, student of Sheikh Wahid, student from the days of Sayyid Khouy. And he told me, even before Sheikh Wahid, and he told me, I asked him once, I said, Sayyidina, I've been reading a lot about Asma bint Umays, and we'll see as we go on here. Is it possible that she was at the same level as al-Banin or even afdal to al-Banin? He says, yes. I said, Allahu Akbar. Who is this lady? Let's find out. She was an absolute incredible human being. We know that she was married to Ja'far Tayyar. They moved to Habasha, to Ethiopia, where they had a son by the name of Abdullah bin Ja'far. She was from a very, very, very well-known tribe. You know something else? Her sister was a woman by the name of Maymuna. Do you know who Maymuna was married to? Who can tell me here? Maymuna. Mu'mineen. Zawjatul Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Her sister Maymuna was married to the Prophet. So she was married to Ja'far and her sister was married to Rasulullah. Okay? Her other sister Lubaba was married to Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib. So now you've got one sister married to Abbas, the great Sahabi of the Prophet and follower of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Abbas One is married to the Prophet, and one is married to Ja'far Tayyar. Ja'far, of course, we know does not need any introduction to her husband. I mean, he was known as, in both of all the books of the Muslims, that there was no one more generous in Arabia than Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. Nobody. I mean, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib had this character that was so overwhelming that the Muslims, Jami'an, all Muslims agree on these points about Ja'far Tayyar. He was known as Bahrul Jud, the sea, the ocean of kindness. The ocean of kindness, Ja'far Tayyar. Oh, wait a second here, Mu'mineen. So Ja'far marries, Salamullahi alayhi, marries Asma bint Umays. They have a child, Abdullah bin Ja'far. Yes, you're following. Abdullah, we all know, we know the story, Abdullah bin Ja'far. Abdullah bin Ja'far was married to who? Zainab al-Kubra, Salamullahi alayhi. So who is the mother-in-law of Sayyidah Zainab? Asma bint Umays. You're starting to see all the important connections here. She's the mother-in-law to Asma bint Umays. When Ja'far dies in battle, this is an amazing story. Rasulullah Khuda comes to the home of Asma. Abdullah bin Ja'far is now an orphan. Abdullah is an orphan. Rasulullah Khuda comes to the home of Asma bint Umays. And he rubs the head of Abdullah. Asma, he doesn't even say anything. He just walks into the house, puts his hand on the head of Abdullah bin Ja'far. Asma bint Umays turns to the Messenger of Allah and says to him, Ya Rasulullah, you are patting my children like as if they have become Ita. And he turns to her and he says, I am astonished by your aql and your intellect. Astonished. That she was a profoundly perceptive person. Profoundly intelligent. You know, the sources describe her as among the most learned, perhaps after Sayyidah Zainab or Bibi Fidda, or at the same level as Bibi Fidda, I would say. The same level as Bibi Fidda. You could just put 1, 2, 3 of the most learned women of all of Arabia. That's her maqam. Huge maqam. Spiritual maqam. Asma bint Umays. Needless did she know that she would be married to Abu Laytan very soon. Imam Ali was the father of orphans. Nevertheless, Ja'far passes away. She now marries Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr was supporting her. In those days, you needed tribal support. You know, marriage today, we think, ideally, yes, it's about sukoon, it's about finding this, finding that, all of these things. Yes, in those days as well, marriage was a life necessity. You couldn't survive without a marital connection, especially after your husband passed, if your family were among mushrikeen or they were in another place. You needed, marriage was the tie that kind of kept you safe. So she was married to Abu Bakr. But the interesting thing is that while she was married to Abu Bakr, she was the midwife to Fatima Zahra. That it was her, Asma bint Umays, that delivered both Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein. I don't know how many people know that. She was the one who delivered both of them and passed them off, at least in the case of Imam Hassan, to the Prophet himself. When the Prophet came to visit them, right at the time of the birth, before they gave the name Al-Hassan, he was being held by Asma bint Umays. Asma bint Umays was the one who delivered this child into the world. She says herself to Imam Zain al-Abidin, now look at who she is. Imam Zain al-Abidin says, I narrate from Asma bint Umays. عن علي بن حسين قال حدثني أسماء بنت عميس. Imam Zain al-Abidin is saying, I'm narrating the story of the birth of Imam al-Hassan from Asma bint Umays. So who is Asma bint Umays if Imam Zain al-Abidin is narrating riwayat from her? Just think, Mu'mineen, who is this woman? Like, what is her status? And the story goes, Imam Hassan was born and she had him wrapped up in a yellow blanket. The Prophet says, no, remove the yellow blanket and put on a white blanket. It's a long story, that's not the discussion. But the point is that she was intimately close to the Ahlul Bayt, salamullahi alayhim. She was very close to them in all of these various incidents. Now, what do we see? We see the role that a mother plays in Islam. This mother was not only a scholar, she was courageous, she was patient, she was patient not only with hunger, but patient throughout the mission of Islam, because she was there from the beginning of Islam. In fact, she gave birth to Muhammad bin Abi Bakr in the middle of a desert. Think of the strength of these women, brothers and sisters. She gives birth in a desert to her son, Muhammad bin Abi Bakr, who was the son of Abu Bakr. In fact, Asma died in 88 Hijrah, so she lived 27 years after Karbala. She lived a long life. Anyhow, Abu Bakr passes away, and now Amir al-Mu'mineen marries Asma bint Umays. But he adopted Muhammad bin Abi Bakr. So Muhammad, the son of Abu Bakr, becomes the adopted son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. But what is more interesting, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow night, is Muhammad becomes the fiercest defender of the succession in the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He becomes the governor of Egypt, testifying that Ali is the successor to the Prophet. How is it that Muhammad, the son of the first Khalifa, becomes the staunchest of Shia, fighting in Jamal and Siffin? I don't know about Siffin, but fighting in Jamal for certain we know, because he is the one who escorted his sister. Fighting in Jamal. The son becoming the adopted son of Mawla Ali. Mawla Ali having no problem with marrying a woman who already has a child. That is also a point here. There's no issue. There's not issue that crossed his mind, oh, she already has a child. There's no issue. Vice versa, either with the woman or the man. In the case of al-Baneen, marrying Amir al-Mu'mineen with children, Amir al-Mu'mineen marrying Asma bint Umays, who had Muhammad. And they had two sons. They had Yahya and Aun. Yahya died as a baby. So Amir al-Mu'mineen is experiencing the tragedy of a loss of a son already as a baby. And Aun died in Karbala. We'll talk about him at the end. Aun was martyred along the side of his brother Imam Hussein. How many of us know about Aun ibn Ali? His story is there in Arbab al-Maqatil. Aun, the son of Asma bint Umays. Muhammad, of course, becomes a martyr. We'll talk about his story later. But this woman had two martyrs, Aun and Muhammad. So there's a lot of Aun and Muhammads, isn't there? There's Aun and Muhammad from Sayyidah Zainab and Abdullah. There's that story. And then there's Aun and Muhammad from Asma bint Umays. Nevertheless, this woman became a loyal and staunch follower of Ahlul Bayt salamullahi alayhim. Loyal. What I'm going to narrate to you now is a little bit of a sensitive matter, but it is historical. It's a historical episode. After the death of the Prophet, as most people know, there was a dispute regarding the inheritance left to Sayyidah Zahra. In the midst of this dispute, there was one camp with early prominent Muslims who believed the Prophet left no inheritance. Then there was the camp of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Fatima Zahra, Asma bint Umays, and others, Abbas and others, who believed the opposite. Now what do you do? Where do you go? A conflict occurred. Unfortunately, a very severe conflict occurred between these two groups of people. It started, of course, with Saqifa, with Amir al-Mu'mineen losing his rights. Eventually, some riwayat state that Fatima Zahra is given the right of Fadak, but then a certain individual takes it and tears it up into pieces. Now we have a problem. Amir al-Mu'mineen now comes onto the scene. He comes and he enters at some point and he says, إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم رجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Amir al-Mu'mineen comes and says, who is this verse about? If Allah has purified these people, who is this verse about? He says, Ashab al-Kisa is part of the 5. He says, فِيمَا نَزَلَتْ أَفِينَا أَمْ فِي غَيْرِنَا? Is it revealed about us or about other people? This individual says, بَلَا فِيكُمْ, it's revealed about you. So then he says, if 2 witnesses come and they testify that Fatima Zahra has committed fahisha, A'udhu Billah, I won't even say what fahisha is, grave, disgusting sin, a very atrocious sin, like like infidelity or something like this, A'udhu Billah. He says, so he asks this individual, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, if 2 people come and they say that she's done this, will you accept it? Because it's 2 witnesses. He says, yes. He says, yes, she's fahisha. She's committed fahish. He says, so you will accept the witness of 2 people over the shahadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can you accept the shahadat of 2 people over the shahadat of Allah Azza wa Jal? On one hand, you're saying, yes, she's from Ayat Tathir. On the other hand, you're saying, no, if 2 witnesses come and say she committed fahisha, she's to be punished as a regular criminal on the street. Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha. Clearly, this irritated a lot of people. They started saying, Sadaqallah wa Sadaqa Ali. Allah is right, true, and Ali is true. Because what he basically said is, can you demand an evidence from a ma'asuma? That does a ma'asum require to come with evidence? If they are determined to be and you accept that they've been purified from any lies by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from telling any lie. Sayyidah Zahra goes to her father's grave to now protest. You'll see where we're going and how Asma bint Umays enters the situation. The person that was felt upset from the prominent Muslims says, La yafsadanna amruna, that our affair is going to be ruined by this person. So he says to his friend that I think we have to kill this Ali. It's better we get rid of him. Better we kill him than letting him to continue to cause trouble in the community. Because Ali is causing fitna in the community. Na'udhu. So they decide that it's better to kill Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now they have to find an assassin to kill him. This is narrated by Ibn Rustam al-Tabari and it's Mustarshid and other sources. They find an assassin. This person then became a very famous warrior in Islam. So-called famous warrior. They find the assassin. They say, are you willing to do it? He says, yes, but where are we going to do it? He says, the only way we can do it is to kill him in Salah. So 19th of Ramadan was not the first time. This is before. They decided that they would kill him while praying. Amir al-Mu'mineen comes to Salah. But before that, Asma bint Umays overheard this plot. Sami'at Asma bint Umays Taliq. She then asks her servant to go to Amir al-Mu'mineen immediately. But she doesn't tell her servant what it is to tell him. She just says, recite this verse. إِنَّ الْمَلَأَ يَأْتَمِرُونَ بِكَ لِيَقْتُلُوكَ فَاخْرُجْ إِنِّي لَكَ مِنَ النَّاصِحِينَ. Subhanallah, subhanallah. Look at the brilliance. She just tells her servant, recite Surah Qasas, ayah 20 to Mawla Ali. Go to his house. Servant must be thinking, like, what is going on here? She just wants me to recite this ayat of Quran to Ali. What is the ayah? The ayah is the reference to Shamun, who was in the house of Fir'aun and overheard the plot to kill Musa and advised Musa very quickly to leave before his impending assassination would take place. Look at the brilliance of Asma bint Umays. Thinking on her feet immediately, knowing the ayah of Quran that would be unsuspecting. No one would think that Surah Qasas ayah 20, she wants to recite. I mean, the servant must be thinking, why am I reciting this verse of Quran to Amir al-Mu'mineen? But nevertheless, the message was delivered. Amir al-Mu'mineen understood immediately what is going on. And it's so beautiful. She says, Inni laka min nasihin. I'm just an advisor to you. Meaning, Mawla Ali, you do what you want. I'm just giving advice. Amir al-Mu'mineen then replies to the servant to tell, Inna Allah yuhilu baynahum wa bayna ma yuridun. That Allah has got in between what they've plotted to do and what will be done. Meaning Allah has come in between them. Time of namaz now comes. Salatul Fajr again, huh? It has to be Fajr. Why Fajr? I don't know. Maybe because that's a place where it's most quiet. I don't know. Fajr. Fajr in the 19th of Ramadan and Fajr in this case. Salatul Fajr comes. Mawla Ali is sitting in Salah. He turns. Some riwayat say in Tashahud, but most likely after the Salah. He turns and he says, La taf'al ya fulan ma umirtaka. Don't do what you have been ordered to do. This man looks at Mawla Ali. Mawla Ali says it again. And he says it again. Now his hands are shaking. He has decided that he would cut the head of Mawla Ali at Fajr while Ali is in namaz. Turns out now he sits there until the sun is about to rise. He is so scared. Literally like a baby, like a child who has wet himself. That's how it's described. He is so scared. He's sitting there shaking. Because he says, if I get up, am I going to get killed? He sits. Ali turns to him and says, were you actually going to do this? He says, yes. At that point, Amir al-Mu'mineen picks him up with one hand. This is the person who's a warrior, a great warrior. Imagine, Amir al-Mu'mineen picks him up with one hand by his collar. In such a way that the people began to scream that if no one intervenes now, this individual is dead. And then Mawla Ali says, had it not been for my promise to the Prophet, you would be dead today. But who intervened in this? Asma bint Umais. Think of the story of history here. This is before she was married to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Think of this. This is before she was even married to him. That the allegiances and alliances and the allegiance to Mawla Ali was sometimes even in secret in the Muslim community. And a woman is the one that Allah uses as a wasila to save the life of Haydar al-Qarrar. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa alihi.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Ali is the voice of human justice. Sawt al-adala al-insaniyah. Like I said, this is the point here is that he desired khair for everybody. He desired fairness for everybody, that nobody should feel that they are left out. Nobody should feel that they are receiving an unjust treatment. Whether it be himself or his daughter, or his wife rather, or whether it be an orphan or a Jew or a Christian. But it is a hard concept to understand for some that the law applies to everyone equally. Everyone equally, regardless. You are not going to make many friends. I'll tell you that much. Because nepotism, just favoring your buddies and your friends, your family, is natural. Let's not lie to ourselves. Nepotism is a natural tendency, a natural feeling. Amir al-Mu'mineen ripped that out from its roots. Well, people don't like it, too bad. He's ready. That's something that he's ready to fight for. Not for himself, for his own ego or nothing, but for that. And this is a tragedy of Imam Hassan. This is a musibah of Imam Hussein. Isn't it? What brought Imam Hussein there was that very nepotism. cronyism, corruption. If we learn anything from the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen, in addition to his ibadah, it's that he fought cronyism and nepotism from the beginning of his time until his death. Because it's a poison and a cancer in the Muslim Ummah. Yet it's something that the Muslim Ummah, unfortunately, is living with today. Why? There's many reasons. We don't know to go into that. Why? And we read the consequences of that in Dua Nutba, فَلَبَّيْكَ الْبَاكُونَ إِيَّاهُمْ فَلَا يَنْدُبُ النَّادِبُونَ. That the Imam of our time says that he is with those that cry. He is mourning. وَلَا يَسْرُخِ الْصَارِخُونَ وَيَعِجِّلْ وَيَدِجِّ الدَّاجُونَ. And those who scream, they scream, Wa Husayna, Wa Imama. وَيَعِجِّ الْعَاجُونَ. And those who wail, they wail, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. That it was on that morning that all chaos broke out in the city of Kufa. It was on that morning that the orphans that cried out, Ya Ali, would not receive a jawab to Ya Ali. It was on that night that that poisoned sword entered the head of Amir al-Mu'mineen because of his fight for justice, Mu'mineen, because of his struggle against this cronyism and nepotism and fasad and corruption. And he answers by saying, Fustu bi Rabbil Kaaba, that I am successful by the Lord of the Kaaba. At this point, the riwayat state that all mayhem breaks out in the city of Kufa. The news is reaching every corner of the city of Kufa, and the sun has not even risen yet, and the people are crying. The munafiq Ibn Muljim is caught, and his accomplices have been caught. It's reported by Sheikh Saduq that Habib bin Umar came to visit Amir al-Mu'mineen on his final day. And he looks at Mawla Ali. He tells him, what kind of injuries do you have? He's looking at him, and Habib begins to cry in front of Mawla Ali. And the riwayah states that Kulthum, Bakkat Kulthum begins to cry now. That they're sitting around Amir al-Mu'mineen and they're crying. And he says, Ya Bunayya, why are you crying? She said, I just remembered that you are about to leave us. And he tells her, if only you can see what I see. Yani tarini ma ara. If only you can see what I can see into alam al-malakut. That now I can see Rasulullah. I can see the angels, malaikatu samawat. I can see the Nabiyeen. Amir al-Mu'mineen is telling Kulthum that he is looking into the other world already. And he can already see into the other world what is transpiring. He says that they are all lined up to greet me one by one by one. Imagine the scene with Kulthum, Sayyida Zainab, the Imam Hassan, Imam al-Hussein, salamullahi alayhi, as the Imam spoke to him. We start thinking about that day because he tells Sayyida Zainab at this moment, and we will narrate more about this tonight. He says, Ya Zainab, today you are crying, but I truly worry for you on that day. It is on that day that I worry for you. Ya Kulthum, the same thing. Why? Because we hear that when they arrived in Karbala, Zainab salamullahi alayhi says that I heard the words of war coming from Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. That when she heard Imam al-Hussein recite this poetry, she knew that the end was coming, that something very perilous was ahead of them. فبكت النسوة ولطمن الخدود. And the women began to cry and they began to hit their face saying, Wa Muhammada wa Aliya. Wa Amma wa Husayna. Wa Aliya. That the women are not crying, they're saying, Wa Husayna. ضيعتنا بعدك يا أبا عبد الله, that we are lost after you يا أبا عبد الله. That Amir al-Mu'mineen was doing ishara to this day when the screams would be heard, when he would not be there to comfort Zainab, to comfort Kulthum. He would not be there to comfort his daughters, to comfort his son. We read in the riwayat that On bin Ali, the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the brother of Imam al-Hussein, is getting ready to go to battle. Imam looks at On looks at Imam, salamullahi alayhi, and what transpires, brothers? Instead of Imam crying, On begins to cry, فَبَكَى On. Imam looks at On and he says, why are you crying? يعني لماذا يبكي? مضمون الحديث. Why are you crying? He says, Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Imam looks at On and he says, Istaslamta lil maut. He says, On, have you surrendered to death already? On says, how can I not when there is no helper and nothing left for you now? Anta faridan. You are all alone. There is no one but you now. On goes out to fight. The son of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the son of Asma bint Umays. He goes out to fight. The riwayat say that he fought from the left flank to the right flank. The left flank to the right flank until he was killed. Salamullahi alayhi. Then they are taken prisoner. And it goes from insult to injury, from insult to injury. From Karbala to Kufa, Kufa to Sham, Mu'mineen, you know this. But in these moments, Imam Zain al-Abidin recites a poem. And let this sink into your hearts. He says, O evil community, there shall be no nourishment and blessings for you from today. For you did not fear our grandfather regarding us. Who is he addressing? He's addressing the Muslim community. He says, when Allah gathers us with Rasulullah, what will you say to us on this day? That you have dragged us ala aqtab and ariyah, on the exposed humps of camels. You have treated us as if we have not said La ilaha illallah. You have treated us as if we are worse than kuffar. We are worse than slaves. You have treated us. كَنَنَا لَمْ نُشِيدُ فِيكُمْ دِينًا. As if we never even took the kalima and shahada to begin with. That the people of Kufa began to have pity. Kulthum, it's narrated, when they entered Kufa, stuck her head out. And the people began to cry. She turns to the people of Kufa and she says, you men have killed us. And your women cry, but our blood is on your hands. And today you have come to cry for us. Can you imagine the sadness that took place? But let us go back to Kulthum again. Let your hearts go to Kulthum. Imagine that moment when she's crying with Amir al-Mu'mineen. And Amir al-Mu'mineen is reminding her of the day that is to come. This is what I am about to narrate to you. When they were on their way to Sham, what happened, Mu'mineen? The riwayat state that the heads of the shuhada were on spears. That there were children falling off horses, falling onto their face, being dragged in the desert like animals. She turns to Shimr. She tells Shimr or Umar ibn Sa'ad, she turns to them and says, can you do me one favor? We are looking night and day at these heads. We are tired of looking at these decapitated heads. Take it away from our children at least. And enter us into a gate of Kufa that there are not too many people. Because until now, Mu'mineen, please recall this fact, that they were paraded as slaves. They were in chains. They were without their coverings. She says, now we are entering the city of Damascus in Sham. Enter us from a gate that is not too there were not too many people. He denied both things. In fact, according to some riwayat, when they would complain, they would whip the women more, over and over again. All they are asking is not to look at the exposed and heads of the shuhada and their brothers. Yet the reward and the jaza that they were given was whips upon their backs. Ala la'natullah ala al-qawmi zalimeen. This is the zalimeen. These are the ones that Amir al-Mu'mineen, if he cried for anything in Laylatul Qadr, if he cried for anything on Laylatul Qadr, it was Musibatul Hussein, Musibatul Nisa'ul Hussein, Haram al-Hussein, Atfal al-Hussein, the children of Hussein salamullahi alayhi. Let us remember this tonight. Then we read in Ziyar al-Nahiya, what do we read from Imam al-Zaman? I will end with this one line, Mu'mineen. Let this sink into your hearts. It's the night of Sahib al-Zaman. When we say Sahib al-Zaman, where are you crying tonight? Aina yabki ya Sahib al-Zaman? Fi ay makan? Fi ay rukun? Fi ay wadi ya Sahib al-Zaman? In which valley are you crying tonight? Where are you mourning tonight? He says, Subiya ahluka kal-abid. That your family was chained up like servants, like slaves. Ahluka kal-abid. أغلالهم and their chains were tied من أيديهم إلى أعناقهم, that their chains were tied from their heads to their necks. Ya Sahib al-Zaman, accept our buka and our tears tonight. بحق جدك أمير المؤمنين, for the right of your grandfather أمير المؤمنين. لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. مات مع حسين، مات مع علي.
हो गया मरना सितम अब्बास का, अब्बास का हो गया मरना सितम अब्बास का, मातम हरम अब्बास का हो गया मरना सितम अब्बास का, मातम हरम अब्बास का हो गया मरना सितम अब्बास का। रो रो के दी क्यों लेते हैं ज़ैनब का नाम मुसर्रिफ, रो रो के अली क्यों लेते हैं ज़ैनब का नाम मुसर्रिफ, रो रो के अली क्यों लेते हैं ज़ैनब का नाम मुसल्लिफ। क्या याद अली को आया है बाज़ार शाम मुसल्ले पर, रो रो के अली क्यों लेते हैं ज़ैनब का नाम मुसल्ले पर, रो रो के अली क्यों लेते हैं ज़ैनब का नाम मुसल्ले पर। हूँ जारी था ज़ख्मी सर से रोते थे नमाज़ी सब में खड़े, हूँ जारी था ज़ख्मी सर से रोते थे नमाज़ी सब में खड़े, किस तरह हसन ने रो रो कर की
فجر نماز مصلی پر رو رو کے علی
کیوں لیتے ہیں
زینب کا نام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام
مصلی پر
کیا ماں کی طرح لینے تم کو مسجد میں چلی آئے زینب کیا ماں کی طرح لینے تم کو مسجد میں چلی آئے زینب بابا کو جا کر ہائے دو فضا میرا پیغام مصلی رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام
مصلی پر
زخمی پہلو جب یاد آیا زخمی پیشانی بھول گیا زخمی پہلو جب یاد آیا زخمی پیشانی بھول گیا زہرا کی مصیبت پر رویا مظلوم امام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی
کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر
یہ پہلی فجر ہے زینب کی سجدے میں سکون ملتا ہی نہیں یہ پہلی فجر ہے زینب کی سجدے میں سکون ملتا ہی نہیں دل ڈوبتا ہے آتا ہی نہیں ایک پل آرام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی
کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر
دیوار کعبہ بیٹھ گئی الحمد لہو میں ڈوب گئی دیوار کعبہ بیٹھ گئی الحمد لہو میں ڈوب گئی امت سے ملا ہے مولا کو کیسا انعام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام
مصلی پر
رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر کیا یاد علی کو آیا ہے بازار شام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر مومنو ہے در کر رار کا ماتم کر لو مومنو ہے
رات کا ماتم کر لو مومنو
سب مل گئے
رات کا ماتم کر لو مومنو ہے کر رات کا ماتم کر لو
مومنو ہے
رار کا ماتم کر لو مومنوں ہے در کر رار کا ماتم کر لو محمد کے علم دار کا ماتم کر لو محمد کے علم دار کا ماتم کر لو مومنوں ہے در کر رار کا ماتم کر لو مومنوں ہے ماشاءاللہ مومنی سب مل کے رار کا ماتم کر لو اور خاک اڑاؤ کہ علی شیر خدا مارے گئے خاک اڑاؤ کہ علی شیر خدا مارے گئے خاک اڑاؤ کہ علی شیر خدا مارے گئے بازوئے احمد مختار کا ماتم کر لو مومنوں ہے ماشاءاللہ مومن دار کا ماتم کر لو مومنوں ہے در کر دار کا ماتم کر لو پر جو کہ پانچوں میں بھی ہے 12 اماموں میں بھی ہے جو کہ پانچوں میں بھی ہے 12 اماموں میں بھی ہے جو کہ پانچوں میں بھی ہے 12 اماموں میں بھی ہے سارے نبیوں کے مددگار کا ماتم کر لو مومنوں ہے کر کر مولا سلام رکھے آپ لوگوں کا کر لو مومنوں ہے کر رار کا ماتم کر لو جو محمد کے علم دار کا ماتم کر لو مل کے جبریل کے استاد کا پرسا دے دو مل کے جبریل کے استاد کا پرسا دے دو جن کے جبریل کے استاد کا پرسا دے دو صاحب دل تلوار کا ماتم کر لو مومنوں ہے در کر رار کا ماتم کر لو مومنوں ہے در کر رار کا ماتم کر لو اپنے قاتل کو دیا جس نے کہ جام شیریں اپنے قاتل کو دیا جس نے کہ جام شیریں اپنے قاتل کو دیا جس نے کہ جام شیریں کوثری نام کے مختار کا ماتم کر لو مومنوں ہے در کر رار کا ماتم کر لو مومنوں ہے در کر رار کا ماتم کر لو مومنوں ہے در کر رار کا ماتم کر لو مومنوں ہے در کر رار کا ماتم کر لو یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا شاہ خیبر گیر کا یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا شاہ خیبر گیر کا یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا آج بابا مر گیا ہے شبر و شبیر کا یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا آج بابا مر گیا ہے شبر و شبیر کا یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا سب کے ماشاء اللہ.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا.
فاطمہ زہرا کے مرقد سے صدا آنے لگی. فاطمہ زہرا کے مرقد سے صدا آنے لگی. اور صدا آنے لگی. یہ مصائب رہ گیا تھا کیا میری تقدیر کا.
جنازہ ہے علی کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا.
شاہ خیبر شیر کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا. آج بابا مر گیا ہے شبر و شبیر کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا.
یا رسول اللہ یہ جبریل نے رو کر کہا. یا رسول اللہ یہ جبریل نے رو کر کہا. ہائے یہ رو کر کہا. ایک حلقہ اور ٹوٹا نور کی زنجیر کا.
جنازہ ہے علی کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا. شاہ خیبر گیر کا. اللہ سلامت رکھ رہا ہوں.
جنازہ ہے علی کا.
آج بابا مر گیا ہے شبر و شبیر کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا.
کیوں چلائی تیغ حیدر پر ابن ملجم بتا. کیوں چلائی تیغ حیدر پہ ابن ملجم بتا. اے ابن ملجم بتا. قتل قرآن کر دیا کاٹا گلا تفسیر کا.
جنازہ ہے علی کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا.
شاہ خیبر کی.
ماشاءاللہ مومنی مولا سلامت رکھے.
ہے علی کا.
غم علی کی بیٹیوں کے پھر سے تازہ ہو گئے. غم علی کی بیٹیوں کے پھر سے تازہ ہو گئے. ہائے تازہ ہو گئے. غم ابھی بھولی کہاں تھی مادر دلگیر کا.
جنازہ ہے علی کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا. شاہ خیبر گیر کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا.
نظروں میں جانے علی کو کیا خیال آتا رہا. نظروں میں جانے علی کو کیا خیال آتا رہا. ہائے خیال آتا رہا. منہ کبھی زینب کا دیکھا اور کبھی شبیر کا.
جنازہ ہے علی کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا. شاہ خیبر گیر کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا.
بیٹیوں کو دیکھتے ہیں اور روتے ہیں علی. بیٹیوں کو دیکھتے ہیں اور روتے ہیں علی. ہائے روتے ہیں علی. ہائے وہ ظالم تصور شام کی تکریر کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا. شاہ خیبر گیر کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا.
آج بابا مر گیا ہے شبر و شبیر کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا. شاہ خیبر گیر کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا.
یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا. شاہ خیبر گیر کا. یہ جنازہ ہے علی کا. آج بابا مر گیا ہے شبر و شبیر کا. یہ جنازہ ہے متوجه زيادة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء المقتولة الشهيدة يا سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا حسين الشهيد بكربلاء. السلام عليك يا علي زين العابدين ومحمد الباقر وجعفر الصادق وموسى الكاظم وعلي الرضا ومحمد الجواد وعلي الهادي والحسن العسكري ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان. الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن وكعبة الإيمان وإمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
एक अदद नारा सलावात ये सोच के कि मौला हमारी नस्लों में आज़ादारी को कायम रखे।